Hello, Wellness Warriors. It always seems to me that whenever I change my scenario, I have trouble streaming. But I'm a little bit late because, uh, anyways. So let's just get started. I wanted to talk to you today about lunches and food that we give our children because I've noticed, and I was watching a video. This is what kind of brought this topic to me. I noticed that we have this weird idea about what's healthy in our country. I'm talking about Canada, but the US is similar. We equate processed food and whole foods and we kind of interchange them like if they're the same thing. And I want us to understand that that has a huge impact on our children. And I don't know that we don't think about this, but like years ago, I don't even know how many years ago, maybe it was in the 60s. I'm not even sure when this started, that schools started to give kids lunches. And obviously, they did that because they were trying to solve a problem. Some people couldn't afford to send their kids to school with lunch. So the school stepped in, the government stepped in, and started to give schools some food that they could give. Now, I believe that that was a good thing because we all know that a cranky, hungry, irritable, uncooperative student isn't going to be able to learn, but also that student is going to end up disrupting the classroom. So, in order to not have that happen, of course, it made sense that the schools would and the government would want to make sure that everybody was eating. Now, that solution made so much sense until we look at what's happening today. Because we've somehow moved away from giving our kids healthy food in these snacks and lunches to giving them. So I remember when I was in elementary school. So that was the late 70s, early 80s. Uh, our school had a program like this. And for the snacks, anybody could have one. So it wasn't poor versus, there was the whole school. If you wanted to have a snack, you could take it. And I remember sometimes taking the snack because it was a good snack. Like, for example, sometimes it was fruit, sometimes it was cheese, and I really liked cheese. And sometimes it was like the other thing I really loved were these trail mix things. So it was raisins, peanuts, and I think it was sunflower seeds. And you always got that with a box of milk. So it was a very healthy whole food snack. I didn't have the lunches because my parents sent me with lunch, so I don't know what the lunches look like. But what I will say is that today, I remember like when my daughter went to school, I don't remember, well, actually, I don't even know what her snacks were like the school would give because she always went with her own things. But I know a few people and they've said that the snacks are, sometimes they're granola bars or cookies. And it got me thinking, like, why is it that we're giving cookies and granola bars? And I think that it's because of this idea we have that processed food and whole foods are interchangeable. And when you go to the store, if you look around, you might notice that there's all kinds of granola bars and fruit gummies and fruit roll ups and cookies that are packaged for lunch boxes. And these are all things that are meant to be given our kids on their way to school. So for their lunches, for their snacks, for their desserts, for their whatever. But I don't know if parents are taking the time to turn these packages over and see that the nutritional information on the back isn't very far off the nutrition information on the back of a cookie or sorry, a chocolate bar or like the sugar content is so ridiculously high. And we started a program and we started with an idea. Let's even go further back. We started with the idea that a child needs to be well fed in order to be able to learn. And that was the goal that we had. We feed the kid properly, then the kid is going to be able to learn and they're going to be able to do well. But and yes, brain development is impacted by what you're eating. right? If you're eating good quality food, of course that's going to impact the body that you're building, your brain being part of it. Your school performance is going to be impacted if you're hungry versus not hungry. If I'm hungry, it's harder to concentrate. If I'm hungry, I'm not going to be in the best mood. So that's not a good scenario for learning. The child's ability to learn is completely and directly related to whether or not they've eaten well. Now, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to try to challenge this idea. And they're going to say that because they don't want to change the story, right? Like, for example, there's a lot of companies that are in collaboration with schools. And so all the school's food is bought by these companies. And so therefore, there's a money-making scenario here. And so if we're not able to give packaged foods, processed foods, the garbage that the kids are eating, if we're not doing that, then the companies lose money. And then it's not simple for parents anymore. And they have to, again, go back to making lunches. And that's going to be hard, especially if they can't afford. So there's a lot of reason why this might want to look the way it is. But our kids are relying on us to make sure that the food that they eat every day is healthy, is quality. So it's important for us to look at this. And these companies will say things like, but look at this person or that person that pulled themselves out of poverty, that, lived in the worst conditions and they did well. So it's not strictly the food. But Wellness Warrior, can I point out that maybe that person that pulled themselves out of poverty or had physical challenges, maybe their health was horrible and they still were able to do amazing things. Well, maybe they would have done even more amazing things if they had better quality food or were living in a functioning body. We need to stop believing that the exception to the rule proves anything more than they are the exception. The rule is still there, and if it's showing itself to be true, then we need to respect that. There are many. So we would have many more children who would be doing well if they were fed better. And they would be going further in their life. So if I feed you well, if I treat you well, if I educate you well, if your conditions are good, you're much more likely to go further in life. Now, the other huge argument that I hear against changing the food, and again, I want to say it's not against changing the food. I shouldn't word it that way. The other argument that I hear people give me when we talk about what their kids are eating is that this idea that my kid is a picky eater, my kid doesn't like these. You're going to have to fight with kids to get them to eat healthy. And again, companies play on insecurities about this. They're sneaking vegetables into fruit juice, right? So that the kids can't taste it. Are there really any vegetables in that? Or is there enough vegetable in there to warrant that the kid drink the amount of sugar that's in it? But we're told that this is the best way to get vegetables in them. No, the best way to get vegetables in your kids is to teach them from young to eat vegetables. There's this idea that kids won't eat quality food, so we need to trick them into eating healthy things. But in fact, I want you to stop and consider that processed foods have only been around for how long? So if we go back before we introduced processed foods, kids were eating normal food like the rest of us. There wasn't special food for adults, right? Kids have always eaten whatever their parents are eating. So that's the first one off the table. That's not true. But the other thing that we need to understand is that kids are little humans. And one thing that humans won't do is starve themselves. If the only thing available to eat ever again for the rest of time was raw, like you get some animal and there's no way to heat it, you have to eat it raw, trust us, we would eat it. So there's always this desire, this drive, this push that we have stay alive. So we won't starve ourselves. If there's food there, we're going to eat it. And this is reality that even if it's not good food, like if it's processed food, I'm going to eat that too. If it's between living and dying, yes, I'm going to eat it. But the flip side of the coin is our kids are not that story. If I'm putting healthy food in front of my kid all the time, eventually my kid will eat it. So companies, they play on this insecurity we have about our kids starving, which, by the way, your kid is not even going to starve from not eating for one day. Like, that's not reality. The next day they'll be hungry and they'll eat what you put in front of them. But we have this worry, this fear, this sadness about the child didn't eat today. And then we end up putting ourselves in a situation where we're doing things that don't make sense. So, Wellness Warrior, I want you to think about the fact that companies will come in and play on that insecurity, and then that gets us into trouble. Now, we don't want our kids looking different to other kids. That's another reason that we give in and buy granola bars and fruit roll-ups as their snacks instead of giving them a healthier block of cheese or even any vegetable, like anything else. We don't do it because we don't want them to look different than the other kids, you know? And so we might even feel that we don't want our kids to feel left out because we hate feeling left out. We don't want our kids to look different than anybody else. But can I point something else out, Wellness Warrior? It's not great to be a carbon copy of other people. Because if I'm a carbon copy of other people, that means there's nothing special about me. And if there's nothing special about me, then me versus the other person, like, what difference does it make? Like, do you ever stop and think about the fact that we want people to want to be around us, but then we turn around and try to be exactly carbon copies of everybody else? So if you could hang out with Violet and get the same experience that you hang out with Mary, why would you bother hanging out with Violet? And the truth is, you're going to hang out with me because you're getting a different experience. I am a different person. I make different kinds of jokes, whether you find them funny or not. And I say different kinds of things. We need to understand that the things that we do, and what we're teaching our kids, be like everybody else, means that they're going to fall in line like everybody else, which means they're going to eat the same stupidity that everybody else is eating and be obese and sick like everybody else. Another thing before I go on to the next point is that we don't want to look like we can't afford. So because I don't want to look like I can't afford to buy my kid granola bars, I put garbage in their lunchbox and they're eating poorly because I don't want to look poor. I want to tell you that that's a mistake. Please don't make that mistake. You should put what's healthy in your kid's lunchbox and understand and help them to understand that this is what's healthy for them. Now, if your child is under the age of 2, this is easy. You just feed them healthy going forward in life. Trust me, they'll probably, even if they do taste a cookie, probably find it tastes gross and not have as big of a struggle as the kids who are constantly getting these fun foods and then needing to actually choose the healthy food. Our kids, and the reason I'm talking about this today is because our kids are actually obese. In Canada, we have an obesity crisis in our children. And it's scary. And it's not going away. And I think the reason it's not going away is because companies can convince us that these fun, snacky things, that Lunchables is a good lunch for my child to have. Companies have convinced us that processed garbage food, garbage, is what our children should be eating on a regular daily basis. Wellness Warrior, that's not reality. They shouldn't be eating these things, but they are. And they're eating these things because we, as parents, feel insecure about being different, about saying no to our kids, about our kids starving, about all these things that are not reality. But our children are ending up with obesity. We have an epidemic of ADHD. We have an epidemic of oppositional defiant. We have an epidemic. Our children have more diagnoses now than ever was seen diagnosed in kids in the 20s, in the 1800s. It's amazing to me how much more diagnoses we have, but it's not at the same time because we're not feeding our kids properly. And because we're not feeding them properly, these problems are happening. We need to feed our children real food, which means we need to be comfortable and confident in the fact that real food is what builds a healthy body. Now, for most of you watching my channel, you're watching it, if you know my channel, because I talk about how eating healthy keto healed my hip. And not only healed my hip, it made losing weight a possibility for me, and I actually lost 70 pounds. So if you know my story, you know that I talk about two pieces of information. A healthy body regulates its weight, but a body can only be healthy if I'm feeding it appropriately, which means I'm not overloading it with sugar. So I'm eating a keto lifestyle, and it means that I'm eating it a healthy amount of protein and fat because I want it to be able to build itself appropriately. So if you know that piece of information, then Wellness Warrior, the thing I want you to think about is the fact that most people get to where I was because they were not doing well. So I wasn't feeling well. I was feeling poorly, and I needed to make these changes so that I could find myself in a situation where that I'm now healthy. But why do we wait until we're not feeling well to make changes? Well, a lot of the time we wait till we're not feeling well to make changes because before that we didn't know that were changes we were supposed to make. Okay, that's fine. But everybody that's watching this right now, you are aware that the food you're eating is causing your weight gain, that the food you're eating is causing your metabolic issues or any other health issues that you're having that are related to food. And since you know that, then are you now teaching your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren that eating healthy food is the number one priority? We educate our children from the time they're born how to speak, how to interact in the world, and we start educating them at 4 years old to prepare them for their ability to get out there into the world at some point. So we educate them through through 18-ish years old, and then they can at that point decide to go to university or CEGEP or whatever you call it to get into a more education, to find a job, to be able to make money. But we don't educate them from the time they're born about eating healthy food to keep your body healthy. Does anybody else see a problem with this? This should be the number one thing we're doing, but we're not doing it. Why? Because we've been fooled by food companies to believe that healthy food, so whole foods and processed foods, are the same thing. They're not. We need to see that they're not so that we can do differently. Our children can't make this change by themselves. They need our help because they don't choose their foods. We do. So we need to choose to feed our kids real foods and understand that because they're little humans or little us's, they're not ever going to starve themselves. And then I want you to also remember, when you look at those little people, especially if you have a little person under the age of 5, especially, you'll see this clearly. They are so much more interested in playing, especially if they're enjoying the game they're playing, than they are in stopping for lunch, breakfast, supper. They usually don't care. What does that tell me? We are not paying enough attention to our children's cycle of food. So their hunger cycles. We keep trying to force them to eat at a certain time, more so than follow them and understand their schedule. When they're babies, we do it, right? When they're babies, we feed them on their schedule. And somehow we start to believe that we know better than them when they should be eating. And because we do that, we first of all, we end up forcing them to eat things, but then they don't like what we're feeding them. And then we now have companies that come and say, oh, they don't like what you're feeding them? Here, we can hide vegetables in this fruit juice or in this fun pizza-like substance. Or so companies come in and sell us fruit roll-ups that are injected with vegetables, or fruit gummies or whatever that are injected with vegetables, but it's really just a bunch of sugar with the minimum amount of vegetable they can say to say that they put vegetable in it. It's not helping our kids to build strong bodies and healthy brains that are going to help them to be the best version of themselves that they can be. And we also, as the adult in the room, are not giving them the good example. So we're making two mistakes here. Most adults have stopped playing, right? We don't get out there and have fun through activities and sports and playing, and so then we turn to food for fun. We're teaching our kids the wrong thing. If we turn to food for fun, then they're looking at us and they're saying, oh, when I become an adult, that's how I'm going to have fun. That's not what we want our kids to believe. We want our kids to understand that food is for nutrition and building blocks, and that fun should come from activities and hobbies and being with people and doing things. That's number one. The second thing that we're doing, though, is that we are not understanding that in our role as the example, it's not about what we say. We keep telling our kids, eat your vegetables, eat your meat, but then we turn around and show them in our action that we're eating ice cream and cookies and cake and junk food. So if we are not being the good example, if we ourselves are overweight, if we ourselves have metabolic issues, if we ourselves are struggling, of course our children are going to struggle. And our children are struggling, right? Because they're overweight. They have all these health issues, both physical and mental health issues. At ages where it was very rare to see these things, we're seeing them more and more often. Wellness Warrior, I'm going to pause right here because I have a favor to ask you. If you know anyone with children, if you yourself have children or know anyone with children or grandchildren, share this video, because we need to talk about this. We need to get more people talking about this. We only focus on solving the problem. We don't focus on proactive, not like creating the best scenario so the problem doesn't happen. We don't focus on that, but we need to. This is why our children are ill. And by the way, I want to point this out too, because I think it drives me nuts. As adults, we understand the idea of TOFI, skinny on the inside, so thin inside, fat outside. We understand that. But we don't understand that it's happening in our kids. Yes, we have obese children, but we also have children who are thin, but have so much behavior issues or skin issues or health issues, and we don't understand that our body will do with the food so the processed garbage that we're eating, it will do with it what it sees to do with it to keep us the healthiest that it can. For some of our children, that means they gain weight, and they're actually the lucky ones. For the rest of our children, it's the mental health issues that start to be produced. It's the physical issues that are being produced. It's the behavior problems that our body is putting that sugar somewhere. All of our kids are eating it. It's just being expressed differently depending on what their particular body decides to do with it. And I want us to understand that we need to take this seriously, because we are the example, right? Our kids look to us to understand what to do. It's your turn. I want to hear from you guys in the comments. I want you to let me know, do you agree with me? Or do you think that I'm just totally like off my rocker? This is making no sense. But like I said, change, it starts with conversation. So we need to talk about this. We need to share this video. We need to give YouTube more reason to like make sure that people know about this topic. So get this video shared, and also to help people to change this, because we can't make change if only 3 people know about it, right? So more people talking about it, the more chance that change happens. Please do me a favor and like the video, because it does help YouTube to understand it's a quality video. So I'm assuming if you made it this far to the end of the video that you found it quality. So like the video, please help me out so that we can get the video shown to more people. I love making videos for you guys. I will be back next Monday. Oh, I might not. I see, I'm saying it again. I say I'm going to be back and then I'm not sure. Maybe I'll be back next Monday. It's a travel day for us back to um, Canada. So I'm not sure if I'll be back. But if I'm available, I will try to go live again, because I love talking to you guys. And it might not be at 11:20. So look out for the link. Talk to you soon.